Hello, this is Claudia, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the July 1st issue of the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Supreme Court upholds birthright citizenship, blocking a key Trump policy. The justices blocked President Trump's executive order that banned birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants and some temporary foreign visitors. The Supreme Court on Tuesday struck down President Trump's executive order limiting birthright citizenship, reaffirming the long-held principle that the Constitution guarantees that nearly all children born on U.S. soil are citizens. The ruling, which was 6-3 to strike down the president's executive order, was a severe blow to a policy pursued by Mr. Trump for more than a decade to prevent babies born to undocumented immigrants and temporary foreign residents from automatically becoming Americans. Chief Justice John G. Roberts, Jr., writing for the majority, explained that Mr. Trump's executive order violated a right enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Children born in the United States to undocumented parents or to parents temporarily in the country, he wrote, are citizens at birth. Citizenship then and now was the right to have rights, to freely participate in our political community, Chief Justice Roberts wrote. The framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every free-born person in this land. He added, we keep that promise today. The Chief Justice was joined in upholding birthright citizenship by the court's 3 liberal justices, along with 2 fellow conservatives, Justices Amy Coney Barrett and Brett M. Kavanaugh. Justice Kavanaugh wrote that he would strike down the executive order based on federal law, not the Constitution. Mr. Trump followed the case closely, even attending part of the oral arguments in person in April. He was the first sitting president to attend an argument. In a social media post after the ruling, the president called the Supreme Court's decision too bad for our country. He then asserted that he could easily make it up in Congress through legislation and that no long and unwieldy constitutional amendment is necessary. He urged Congress to start immediately to work on ending expensive and unfair to our country birthright citizenship. Those assertions appeared at odds with the court's ruling, given that 5 justices, a majority of the court, ruled that the Constitution guarantees birthright citizenship. Any measure, whether proposed as a bill or a constitutional amendment, would face long-shot odds. The key text of the 14th Amendment reads, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That language, dating to the 1860s, has long been understood to grant birthright citizenship. Chief Justice Roberts traced the underpinnings of the concept back to England, writing that colonists who crossed the Atlantic Ocean brought with them the common law of citizenship by birthright. Colonists. The idea that the citizenship is automatically given to babies born on the U.S. soil took on particular importance in a nation of immigrants, the Chief Justice wrote, nodding to the tens of thousands of emigres from the Old World, Scotch, Irish, French, German, Welsh, and many more, who arrived on American shores, some of whom hoped to stay only a short time, others of whom hoped to never leave. The court had already confirmed the principle of birthright citizenship in the landmark 1898 ruling in United States versus Wong Kim Ark. Justice Roberts wrote, in that case, the court held that the 14th Amendment guaranteed citizenship to Wong Kim Ark, who was born in San Francisco to parents who were both Chinese citizens because he was born on U.S. soil. 3 of the court's conservatives, Justice Clarence Thomas, Justices Samuel A. Alito, Jr., and Neil M. Gorsuch, dissented. Neither Justice Alito nor Justice Gorsuch was on the bench on Tuesday, the court's final opinion day of the term. In his 91-page dissent joined by Justice Gorsuch, Justice Thomas said that the 14th Amendment was intended to enshrine citizenship for formerly enslaved people and their descendants, a repudiation of the court's infamous Dred Scott case that had denied citizenship to black people. Blacks were entitled to citizenship because they were Americans, Justice Thomas wrote. They had no other homeland, owed no allegiance to any foreign power, and were subject to no other authority. Justice Thomas added that the same could not be said for the children of foreign temporary visitors who were attached to their home country, lacked similar bonds to this country, and would not be called upon in time of war. Justice Alito called the decision a serious mistake, writing that the court's view of the Constitution confers citizenship on virtually everyone who happens to be born in this country, including the children of birth tourists, people he characterized as women who come here solely for the purpose of giving birth to a child and then promptly return home. The legal battle over birthright citizenship began on the first day of Mr. Trump's second term when he announced an executive order titled Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. In that order, he declared that citizenship would no longer be automatically granted to babies born on U.S. soil. In particular, children born to immigrants who entered the country illegally would no longer be citizens, nor would those born to parents here on a lawful but temporary basis, just as those on student work or tourist visas. The president's order faced immediate legal challenges as civil rights organizations, immigrant advocacy groups, and expectant parents sued, successfully winning in court to block the order while lawsuits unfolded. It never went into effect, and there were few signs the administration had been preparing the dramatic overhaul of the citizenship system that would have been necessary were it allowed. In addition to the Constitution, the challengers also said the order violated federal statutes from 1940 and 1952 when Congress codified the language of the Citizenship Clause into law. The case heard by the Supreme Court was filed in New Hampshire on behalf of two babies subject to the president's executive order and their parents and a pregnant woman. The Trump administration had asserted the president's executive order restores the original meaning of the Citizenship Clause. Lawyers for the administration also said the order would affect only babies born after the order went into effect, trying to assuage concerns of millions of Americans who feared the order could cause them to lose their national identity. Mr. Trump also drew attention to babies born through what he was called birth tourism, when wealthy foreigners visit the United States intending to give birth while in the country so their babies are citizens. After Tuesday's ruling, Cecilia Wang, the national legal director for the American Civil Liberties Union, which represented the challengers, celebrated the ruling, writing that the decision reaffirms a fundamental American promise. If you are born here, you are a citizen. A president cannot change the Constitution by executive fiat, she wrote in an emailed statement, adding, the Constitution's guarantee of birthright citizenship stands strong. Trump pulled in at least $2 billion after returning to the White House. The release of a mandatory financial disclosure for 2025 shows that Trump's family holdings, particularly the president's crypto businesses, were stunningly lucrative. President Trump reported a stunning windfall in his first year back in the White House, including about $1.4 billion from his family's cryptocurrency businesses, a new filing shows. All told, the president pulled in at least $2.2 billion, a figure that includes other parts of his vast holdings, such as his real estate assets. That compares to a minimum of $622 million his enterprises pulled in for all of 2024. Before he returned to the presidency, one of the biggest hauls in 2025 came when an investment firm tied to the United Arab Emirates bought nearly half of the Trump family's main crypto company, World Liberty Financial, a transaction that blurred the line between foreign policy and private enterprise. Mr. Trump also collected hundreds of millions of dollars from sales of his Trump meme coin and World Liberty's sale of its own digital tokens. The results, detailed in Mr. Trump's mandatory financial disclosure report for 2025 and released on Tuesday, pulled back the curtain on the president's business operations. His crypto ventures, the report shows, are now some of his most lucrative enterprises, a remarkable turnabout for a man who once slammed crypto as a haven for drug dealers and scammers. The president's finances, which had been something of a mystery, highlight a conflict in his crypto business. Mr. Trump is a major crypto industry operator and its top policymaker. It is hardly the only issue to arise from having a businessman serve as a president. The president's family business, the Trump Organization, has also capitalized on Mr. Trump's popularity in certain parts of the world, licensing the Trump name to properties in countries that are crucial to U.S. foreign policy interests, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Those two deals alone generated more than $14 million for Mr. Trump last year. The filing shows the White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment, though in the past Mr. Trump has noted that he is exempt from federal conflict of interest laws. Anna Kelly, a White House spokeswoman, said in a recent statement that Mr. Trump only acts in the best interests of the American public and that there are no conflicts of interest. Although the report released on Tuesday offered revenue figures for Mr. Trump's crypto and real estate ventures, it did not reveal whether all of the businesses turned a profit or a loss, which is consistent with his previous filings. The report also offers little clarity on the president's net worth, much of which is tied to estimated property values and the fluctuating paper worth of crypto assets and his stock portfolio. For his largest assets, including cryptocurrency and real estate, Mr. Trump reported a minimum valuation of $50 million with no upper limit. Revenue from Select Ventures, World Liberty Financial, in 2024, $57 million, 2025, $799 million, a change of plus $742 million. Strump meme coin sales to 24 nothing 2025 $636 million. Mar-a-Lago $50 million 2025 $77 million, a plus change of $27 million, and Trump National Doral Golf Club $110 million in 2024, $122 million in 2025, a change of plus $11 million. The president shares in his own publicly traded social media company, Trump Media and Technology Group, are worth about $875 million, according to other public filings, representing one of the single greatest sources of the president's net worth. Those shares have plummeted over the last year, eroding some of his net worth. But it was Mr. Trump's crypto business that proved to be a top revenue stream. Once an outspoken skeptic of crypto, Mr. Trump embraced the industry on the campaign trail in 2024 and started a series of ventures that have reaped enormous sums. With his three sons, he helped create World Liberty, a crypto firm that sells a digital currency called WLFI. Last year, World Liberty marketed its coin to investors around the world, with 75% of each sale allocated to a Trump business entity after the deduction of certain expenses, guaranteeing the president would make money even if the value of the token declined. The president received about $500 million from those sales last year, according to the filing, compared with $57 million in 2024. World Liberty enriched the Trump family in other ways as well. In January of 2025, days before Mr. Trump's inauguration, an investment firm tied to the government of the UAE bought a 49% stake in World Liberty, raising a slew of ethical concerns. Soon the emeritus struck a deal with the Trump administration over the objections of some national security officials for the export of valuable computer chips that power artificial intelligence. The filing released Tuesday did not explicitly refer to the deal, but it mentioned unnamed investments that generated more than $200 million for Mr. Trump. The other major source of Mr. Trump's crypto wealth was his meme coin, a novelty currency known as $Trump that he started selling days before his inauguration. He earned more than $600 million from sales of the coin, according to the filing. The coin's price shot up briefly before plummeting, with its price recently hovering around $1.67, a roughly 80% drop from a year ago. The Trump family also continued to pull in chunks of money from real estate branding deals, the new report showed, including some in the Middle East that generated a minimum of $35 million in revenue last year. Deals in Vietnam and Romania, as well as older ones in India, Turkey, and Indonesia, combined to bring in at least another $20 million. And the president's major real estate holdings in the United States, like Trump National Golf Club near Miami, pulled in $122 million in revenue, while his Mar-a-Lago club generated a total of $77 million for him, the report said. Now that Mr. Trump is flush with cash, and now that he has eliminated some of his long-running legal problems, he has reduced the liabilities on his balance sheet, including after an appeals court overturned a nearly $500 million legal judgment stemming from a civil fraud case in New York. The disclosure report shows that Mr. Trump still owes money more than $50 million to the writer E. Jean Carroll, who accused him of sexually abusing and defaming her. The Supreme Court on Monday declined the president's request to review one of the judgments Ms. Carroll secured against him. The financial disclosure captured several other legal wins for Mr. Trump, including payouts he collected from media and technology giants like ABC News, Paramount, and Meta. ABC settled a defamation lawsuit while Paramount agreed to pay him over the editing of an interview on the CBS News program 60 Minutes. Meta settled a lawsuit he filed over the suspension of his Facebook and Instagram accounts after the January 6, 2021 riot at the Capitol. The disclosure also captured gains in Mr. Trump's investments in the financial markets. While these numbers appear in wide ranges, making it difficult to decipher meaningful trends or specific amounts, they suggest that Mr. Trump continues to get richer as president. At the end of last year, the disclosure shows he held investment assets of at least $857 million, compared with a minimum reported value of $236 million the year prior. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. In the United States, every World Cup team is a home team. It's a tiny restaurant in the Little Morocco neighborhood of Queens, but throughout this World Cup it has swelled with pride, song, and beating drums as the Moroccan national team has pushed its way deep into soccer's biggest international tournament. It's a scene that has been echoed across the United States in a multitude of languages and colors, as soccer fans from all over the world, many now making their homes in America, have packed bars, restaurants, living rooms, and concert venues. No matter where they came from or where they gathered, they all sought the same experience, a chance to watch their nations compete, while surrounded by others who share passion and pride for the country they or their ancestors once called home. Together, these fans have brought places throughout the United States to life. Thousands of Bosnians settled in the St. Louis area during the 1990s as war and genocide ripped their communities apart. The city is now home to more than 60,000 Bosnians, scores of whom gathered at Bevo Cafe Lounge on June 24th to watch Bosnia and Herzegovina play. This is only the second time the team has qualified for the World Cup and the first time it has reached the knockout round. Its reward meeting one of the hosts, the United States, on Wednesday in Santa Clara, California. In Miami, Little Haiti comes to life. More than 100,000 residents of Miami-Dade County, Florida, are Haitian descent, and the Little Haiti neighborhood of Miami has long been their central hub. During the World Cup, fans of Haiti's team have flocked to the neighborhood, packing restaurants, bars, and even parking lots to watch the action. Many have come wearing jerseys, while others simply dressed in the red and blue of the Haitian flag. Haiti ended up in a tough group, losing all of its matches, including a 3-0 defeat to Brazil on June 19th. But for some fans, the fact that the team had qualified at all was its one victory. Before this year, Haiti had played in only one other World Cup, in 1974. Moroccan joy in Queens, New York. Toria Lamtafa worked as a chef 4 years ago at a restaurant in Astoria, Queens, in the heart of an enclave on Steinway Avenue known as Little Morocco. After the Moroccan team upset Portugal in a World Cup quarterfinal, Miss Lamtafa remembers hundreds of Morocco fans surging onto Steinway Avenue, setting off flares and red smoke bombs to celebrate. It was a good memory for all of us, she said. We were very, very proud. You just needed something to be happy. After COVID, this was amazing. The neighborhood has long been a hub for immigrant communities from North African countries, including Egypt, and is also home to a large Greek community. Many settled in Astoria decades ago, drawn by low rents in a neighborhood that could feel calm compared with other bustling parts of New York. Miss Lamtafa, who moved to the United States in 2007, that she originally lived in Ridgewood, a neighborhood of Queens, but word of mouth led her to Astoria, where she now runs her own restaurant. The restaurant Dar Labaha is just a few blocks from where she used to work. Miss Lamtafa said that when she opened it just over a year ago, she wanted to create a space where people could not just eat but also gather to watch soccer like she did growing up with her father in Morocco. It was only one TV and we had to watch with him, Miss Lamtafa said, so we grew up with soccer. During this tournament, Morocco fans have packed into Dar La Baja on game days, with many in Morocco's red jersey and others in the team's white kit. They were rewarded with a berth in the knockout stages, and then again on Monday, when their team won a tense matchup from the Netherlands in a penalty shootout. Fans took to the streets in jubilant celebration, just as they did in 2022. Kasim Tahali, age 19, of Houston, is spending the summer in New York for an internship and watched the first Morocco game of the tournament on June 13th at the restaurant. After the team scored, Mr. Tahali received a flurry of texts from his friends. When they think of Morocco, they think of me, he said. He wasn't the only Texan in the joint. Jory and Ahmed Lamgahari traveled from the Dallas area because Ms. Lamgahari, age 43, wanted her husband to experience the city during the tournament. I wanted him to get the New York World Cup vibe, she said. Mr. Lamgahari, 33, said the Moroccans make their own ambiance, adding, we want to live it. In Chicago, hope for another French title. The French love a good outdoor drinking venue. For the country's June 26th match against the rowing Norwegians, fans gathered on the outdoor patio of Soccer House in Chicago, a city whose deep French roots stretch back to the colonial days. France is widely considered a tournament favorite, potentially giving its fans several more opportunities to celebrate. In Provo, Utah, Masai Mania is a family affair. Sporting the colors and intergenerational in Provo, Utah, Louise and Lydia Peve moved there 25 years ago following a son who emigrated first and decorated their home with the small Argentinian flags ahead of the team's match against Austria on June 22nd. As game time approached, about a dozen members of the family painted their faces with the sky blue and white of Argentina's flag. Together they sat around the TV with their eyes trained particularly on Lionel Messi, the team's star, who was likely playing in his last World Cup. He finished the game with 3 goals, a hat-trick, and a new generation of fans in the Pevy household. In Silver Spring, Maryland, a happy return to the World Cup. Congolese fans in Silver Spring, Maryland, belted out their national anthem in a Veterans Hall, hands over their hearts, ahead of the country's match against Colombia on June 23rd. Refugee aid programs have resettled many Congolese families in the suburbs north of the nation's capital, as their nation has been ravaged by war, unrest, and now an Ebola outbreak. The Congolese side lost its match to Colombia on that day, but the team managed to advance out of the group stage for the first time in its history. Before this World Cup, the country has been to the tournament only once, in 1974, when it lost all of its matches. A block party of red and green in Rhode Island. The go-to drink special last weekend in East Providence, Rhode Island, was a vodka cocktail called the CR7, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a resident of the region who didn't know it was in honor of Cristiano Ronaldo, the 41-year-old Portuguese striker who was playing in his 6th and likely last World Cup wearing his famous number 7. The drink was served at the Portuguese restaurant Odinas, a neighborhood staple. A large number of Portuguese immigrants settled in this corner of Rhode Island and nearby Massachusetts during the Industrial Revolution, finding work in the textile, whaling, and manufacturing industries. Life is beautiful in Portugal, said Natalia Pavaneves, who moved to the United States when she was 16 and now runs Odinas, which was founded by her father. But at the time there was a lot of poverty because there were no jobs and there was no tourism. There were none of that stuff going on, so you had to find a means to provide for your family. After pre-gaming over CR7s along with beer, wine, meats, and shrimp, some fans walked from Odinas to a watch party that stretched for 2 blocks from a screen in the parking lot of nearby Cafe Alma to Campino's, another Portuguese restaurant. It's just a great feeling, said Kevin Matas, the cafe's owner. Everybody's enjoying themselves. It doesn't matter the result on the screen. Some fans might not have agreed, though. A scoreless draw sent both teams through to a knockout stage. The block party, with hundreds of fans lining the streets, was in part the brainchild of East Providence's mayor, Roberto da Silva. We had no idea that it'd be this many people showing up, he said. We thought we got a good crowd, but this is much more than I ever expected. Some had to stand on their tiptoes to see the screens, others packed into shops to sit down and watch the game, while others pulled out their phones as they stood in line to buy beer and snacks from food trucks and vendors. A backyard party in a Texas border town. Roughly 4 out of 5 residents in the Texas border town of Wells Laco are of Mexican descent, making the country's June 18th match in Guadalajara feel like a home game. For a youth soccer team, it was a chance to watch their heroes take another step toward the knockout rounds. Under the night sky, they watched anxiously, breaking into dance after Mexico won. Emigration brings anguish to Uruguay fans in Miami. Uruguay needed this one, the nation that hosted the first World Cup in 1930, winning the tournament that year, and again in 1950, was on the brink of elimination last week against Spain, considered one of the strongest teams in the tournament. Fans at Doña Paulina, Uruguayan restaurant in Miami, anxiously watched their team fight for a chance to stay in the competition. In San Diego, it wasn't to be. Spain emerged victorious 1-0. In San Diego, fans cheer the Samurai Blue. Their team is called the Samurai Blue, and the many Japanese fans living in Southern California, a diaspora that first settled there in the late 19th century as farmers and fishermen and endured harsh incarceration during World War II, made their blue kits prominent as the team played its way through a so-called group of death. They eventually earned a second-place finish to reach the round of 32. The result was a Monday matchup with Brazil, in which Japan fell 2-1. In Los Angeles, mixed feelings about the Iranian team. For Americans from Iran, supporting the Iranian national team has been a thorny issue. Some have refused to even watch the matches. To them, the team feels like an extension of the government, whose persecution drove many to flee the country. It's especially difficult as their new home in the United States and their old home are at war. That's a little conflict for me, said Ruzba Farhankapour, who helped lead an Iranian student uprising in 1999 and fled the country the following year, seeking political asylum in America. I am a little different from other fans because no way I can cheer or stand for either Islamic Republic of Iran's national anthem nor for the flags. He added, I'm an American now. My flag is the U.S. flag. Others of Iranian descent have eagerly backed their national team and bristled at its travels, especially in Southern California, which was host to the team's first match and is home to the largest diaspora of Iranians outside Iran. Many live, shop, and eat in the Westwood area of Los Angeles, where an enclave has become known as Tahangrilis after the Iranian capital. Still, compared with those of other diasporas, gatherings to back the Iranian team have seemed smaller and more muted. Only a handful of fans gathered at Atari Sandwich Shop, a Parisian eatery in the heart of Tahrangelis, during Iran's June 21st match against Belgium at SoFi Stadium in nearby Inglewood, California. Inside the restaurant, some fans actually watched the game over kebab plates and pastries. Others outside proudly waved their flags on the neighborhood thoroughfare, Western Boulevard. Bijan Bahamani, who lives in Los Angeles, took his 2-year-old son to Iran's match against New Zealand on June 15th in Inglewood with his father-in-law. While he opposes the Iranian regime and hopes for democracy one day, Mr. Bahmani said he still wanted to cheer the national team. It's complicated because we have feelings a lot of different ways with the complicated politics, said Mr. Bahmani, age 41, who moved to the United States in 2001. I am definitely rooting for Iran because they represent Iran, not the government. Even as he took in the game with his family, Mr. Bahmani said the war was on his mind. I hope this peace lasts, he said, referring to the current fragile ceasefire. Every day we are worried. Celebrating the small but mighty in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Every tournament has a surprise underdog. This year it's Cape Verde, a small island nation off the western coast of Africa. Its team had an opportunity on Friday to become the smallest country by population ever to advance to a World Cup knockout round. The pivotal match drew people of Cape Verdean descent to a Veterans Hall in New Bedford, Massachusetts, about an hour drive south of Boston. Like Portugal and Brazil, whaling and related industries brought a sizable population of immigrants from Cape Verde to southeastern New England. A scoreless tie with Saudi Arabia was all it took for tears and roars to erupt in the Veterans Hall. Their team would keep playing for at least one more game. A Brazilian dance party near Boston. Massachusetts has a long history of Portuguese-speaking settlers, making Brazilians feel welcome in the Boston area. That's especially the case in the southwest suburb of Framingham, Massachusetts, where the Brazilian-born population rivals that of Boston. They packed into Tropical Cafe, a Brazilian restaurant in Framingham, gathering around high-top tables as their team played Haiti on June 19th. After Brazil secured a 3-0 win, fans made the restaurant an impromptu dance club to celebrate. In Texas, German fans root and eat to honor a neighbor. Bratwurst and steins of beer accompanied the match at a Bavarian grill in Plano, Texas, a Dallas suburb, as Germany played Curaçao in Houston on June 14th, but perhaps the city's most important fan of the German team was not there. Jürgen Mochnecki, who was born in Braunschweig, German, immigrated to the United States in 1984 and worked in hotels across the country before settling in Plano. He opened the restaurant in 1993 and died at age 67 on June 10th, the day before the World Cup began. His restaurant went on with the planned festivities. One of the managers said Mr. Mochnecki would have wanted them to. His team won its opener 7-1, but went home on Monday, falling to Paraguay in a heartbreaking penalty shootout, the opposite of Morocco's elating win hours later. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Judges strike down Trump rule on loan forgiveness for public servants. 2 federal courts have blocked a new Trump administration rule that could have narrowed eligibility for a student loan forgiveness program for public servants. 2 federal courts struck down a Trump administration rule that would have allowed the Education Department to disqualify employers from participating in a student loan forgiveness program for public servants. The rule had fulfilled an executive order issued last year and appeared to target groups supporting undocumented immigrants, diversity initiatives, or gender-affirming care for children under the age of 19, among others. The regulation could have pushed borrowers out of the program if their employers were deemed to be engaged in activities that had a substantial illegal purpose. Judge Mayong J. June, a federal district court in Massachusetts, vacated the rule on Tuesday, just a day before it was scheduled to take effect. More than 22 states, along with several cities, counties, nonprofit employers, and others, challenged the administration's new rule, arguing that it would allow the government to target employers that disagreed with its policies. The judge found that the Trump administration had exceeded its authority and noted that Congress had clearly described which types of workers were eligible for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which was written into law in 2007. The program is open to government and nonprofit employees, like school teachers, public defenders, and librarians, after they make 120 qualifying payments in an income-driven repayment plan, which requires at least 10 years of service in qualifying jobs. Any remaining balance is eliminated. The statute does not vest any discretionary authority in the Secretary to disqualify employers and consequently borrowers or to alter unambiguous requirements set forth in the repayment provision or the statutory definition of public service jobs, the judge wrote. He concluded that the final rule is contrary to law and promulgated in excess of statutory authority, is arbitrary and capricious, and violates the First Amendment. In a separate case challenging the same regulation, Judge Amir H. Ali of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia found the new rule unlawful, siding with several advocacy groups that filed a lawsuit in November. Many public servants have staked their financial futures on the program, and being disqualified could have potentially upended their finances. More than 1 million people have received tens of billions of dollars in loan forgiveness under the program. This rule was clear overreach and has already harmed public service employers and workers across the country, said Winston Berkman-Breen, legal director at Protect Borrowers, which represented plaintiffs in one of the Massachusetts cases. With today's decisions, teachers, social workers, immigration attorneys, and government employees can continue their important work without fear the federal government will punish them for their service. Nicholas Kent, the Undersecretary of Education, said in a statement that the department stood behind this common-sense policy to assure that taxpayer dollars are never used to subsidize illegal activities and was evaluating next steps. To escape record heat, the French are taking to water. Both have been deadly. Crowds are filling the Canal Saint-Martin in Paris as temperatures soar above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. 40 people drowned while swimming in other waterways. Perched on the cobblestone bank of the Canal Saint-Martin in Paris, watching his children whoop and shout as they splashed in the murky water, Stéphane Guillaume looked like a rare Parisian who had beaten the heat, but in the new normal of scorching hot Paris summers, he said, any victory would be fleeting. It's going to get worse every year, said Guillaume, a 44-year-old computer engineer. It's very worrying because we're already at the limit of what's bearable. With temperatures across France soaring to the highest levels ever recorded in June, more than 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, thousands of people are turning to extreme measures, jumping into canals, rivers, and other waterways for relief. It can be a deadly choice. 40 people have drowned in heat wave-related accidents between June 18th and June 23rd, according to the French government. Many in France still recall the summer of 2003 when nearly 15,000 people in the country, most of them older, died in a freak heat wave that prompted recurring debates about how to weatherproof French society. The ecologists, the Green Party, is proposing paid time off for those most exposed to climate disruptions, while decades of cultural resistance to air conditioning seems finally to be on the wane. Yet the mismatch between tropical heat and northern European infrastructure remains stark. In Paris, the Louvre Museum and the Eiffel Tower announced they would close early on several days this week. Near Toulouse in southwest France, the authorities shut down a nuclear plant because the water temperature in the river Garonne used to cool its reactor was dangerously hot. While swimming in the Canal Saint-Martin is off limits except for a short stretch that is roped off and patrolled by lifeguards, locals and visitors are taking matters into their own hands. Whether it is leaping off its cast-iron bridges or cavorting with brightly colored floats, they have turned much of this 3-mile waterway into an urban oasis, not to mention a symbol of mild insurrection. Mr. Guillaume said he didn't worry about safety. He kept a close eye on his children, and he said city officials regularly tested water quality in the canal, which once supplied Paris with grain loaded on barges. Police cars rolled past, their officers doing nothing to stop the crowds from swimming or jumping. The kids are happy, said Mr. Guillaume, referring to the daily visits with his family since the heat enveloped Paris last weekend. They stay at home, and in the evening they go to the canal. It's like a holiday. Still, he said he had a disquieting sense that the prolonged nature of this heat wave, the second of the summer, and it's not yet July, dramatized the untenable nature of climate change. School, hospitals, and houses in France are not equipped for long stretches of extreme heat, a reality that has become vividly clear this week as the country wilts under a persistent, unforgiving sun. On Tuesday, Prime Ministers Sébastien Lecornu convened a second meeting of the government's interministerial crisis task force on the heat wave. Speaking to reporters beforehand, he stated the obvious. France was in the grip of a heat wave of exceptional intensity, adding that all local and national temperature records are being broken every day and every night. The real issue that should concern us is the duration of the crisis and this event, Mr. Lecornu said. He noted that under the most dire of 3 forecasts by Météo France, the National Weather Service, the heat wave could persist for weeks and carry us through much of July. The other 2 forecasts call for temperatures to return to more normal levels within a few days or a week. The Prime Minister said he welcomed proposals to make France more resilient in the face of extreme heat. Paris has already done some things to cool its streets, including planting trees and installing water spray stations. Other ideas, like making buildings more habitable in extreme heat, will take time, meaning they will bring scant relief to people sweltering today. Given those limitations, it appeared that Paris has opted for a laissez-faire approach with the crowds at Canal Saint-Martin. City officials announced they extended the opening of the canal for swimming until July 4th and also installed a shower for bathers to use after they get out of the water. For all the French insouciants, there were reminders the Canal Saint-Martin is an industrial waterway, not a neighborhood pool. On Tuesday evening, children were playing with a shopping cart still dripping with algae that had been dredged from the bottom. They said that bicycles were another common discovery. A French comedian, Hugh Lavigne, posted a playful YouTube video of himself going for a swim in the canal. After dunking his head briefly underwater, he resurfaced and promptly appeared to vomit on the cobblestone bank. "That is so good," he exclaimed before turning around and going in for more. Some Parisians contend that swimming in the canal is better than suffering at home. Victoria Cog, age 47, an elementary school teacher, noted that the temperature in her house was 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit and even hotter. In her classroom, such heat is a risk given that she said she suffered from a chronic cardiovascular disease and has two children aged 9 and 13. If I faint alone at home with my kids, who's going to call emergency services? Miss Cog said. At least here we can all watch each other, she said, gesturing to the zone of the canal which has 5 lifeguards. It's very well supervised. There's no current, and there's plenty of space in the water. To some visitors, the Canal Saint Martin is Paris's newest tourist attraction. Friends from Durham University in Northern England who play in a jazz band have found their way to the canal to cool off between gigs. Now they were waiting in a line of people, mostly young men, to leap off one of the bridges. I heard about this place from a friend who is a pompier, said Bena Bird, age 22, using the French term for firefighter. Mr. Bird said his friends researched the water quality online and were satisfied they would not get sick if they kept their mouths closed when they were underwater. One of his friends, Ella Eastwood, age 21, said, "You kind of assume there is sewage running through a river in the middle of a major city. Swimming is forbidden when it rains and there is a risk of sewage overflow." Still, Miss Eastwood said, "London doesn't have anything like this." And with that, she clambered over the stone railing and leaped into the water with a yelp. Who needs an art museum when there's a banana room in town? As arts institutions struggle to increase attendance, entertainment centers marketed as museums are wooing those who once might have gone to view art. Critics mocked its sprinkle pool and banana room. They laughed at its meager presentation of sugary memorabilia like a recreation of Fudgy the Whale. But while many traditional museums are suffering from low tourism and high overhead costs, the Museum of Ice Cream is expanding its audience and charging as much as $89 for a VIP, very important popsicle ticket. Despite its name, the Museum of Ice Cream, a for-profit amusement center, has more in common with Chuck E. Cheese than an educational institution. However, its adoption of museum branding and its emphasis on immersive experiences have blurred the lines in the cultural landscape, wooing tourists and families that might otherwise visit a traditional museum. The company said it received about 1 million visitors annually across its 6 locations, including in New York, Chicago, and other big cities, higher attendance numbers than the Whitney Museum of American Art and the Cleveland Museum of Art. At a time when audience levels have plateaued at many traditional museums, the ability of entertainment companies styled as arts institutions to siphon away visitors poses a new challenge to the industry, according to experts. The Museum of Ice Cream was one of the first in a wave of immersive amusements that include the Museum of Illusions, Team Lab, Meow Wolf at the Museum of Balloons. The last 2 plan to open locations in Manhattan within the next 2 years. And there are always newcomers. Dataland, a for-profit company that bills itself as the world's first museum of AI arts, opened in Los Angeles last month. What has made people feel like it's worth their time and money? Asked Stephen Riley, a former museum executive whose think tank, ReMuseum, looks at innovation in the industry. The culture has diverged and museums could have done more to seem relevant to people. My simplistic way of thinking, he added, is that if you are creating positive memories, then people will want to return. When the Museum of Ice Cream started a decade ago, it was just a pop-up store across the street from the Whitney. Manish Vora, the company's chief executive and co-founder, said he had sought advice from the Whitney's director at the time, Adam Weinberg, who took Vora's staff through docent training and discussed the advantages of time ticketing. Vora initially based his business model on attracting young adults. All our institutions are struggling to get younger people off their phones and into real life, he said, explaining how an early version of the museum was pitched as an alternative date spot. But after the coronavirus pandemic, the strategy shifted its focus to families with young children, which now account for more than half of the center's visitors. The Museum of Illusions, which offers Instagrammable optical tricks like oversized kaleidoscopes and infinity mirrored rooms, has followed a similar growth model. The original location opened in Zagreb, Croatia, more than a decade ago, and the museum has grown to encompass more than 70 locations, with 12 new sites planned to open by year's end. General admission for adults at its compact venue in New York is $35, slightly higher than the $30 they need to enter the Whitney just a few blocks away. We live in a very experiential economy, said Kim Schaefer, the Illusion Museum's chief executive, who was previously an executive in the water park industry. People want to touch. They want to feel. Unlike traditional museums, where admission might account for just 7% of overall revenue, according to a 2018 report by the Association of Art Museum Directors, companies like the Museum of Illusions expect about 80% of their revenue to come from annual ticket sales. Schaefer said families account for half of the Museum of Illusions customers, with much of the remaining attendance coming from young adults, but the question of how to attract new audiences and increase admission revenue has become urgent for traditional museums, many of which are facing higher overhead costs and declining philanthropy. A recent study by SMU Data Arts, a research center at Southern Methodist University in Texas, found that revenue at museums declined by 36% between 2019 and 2024. Just under half of the 6,500 institutions surveyed said they operated at a loss in 2024, compared with 36% in 2019. There have also been waves of layoffs. Over the last year, at least 7 American museums have cut their staff. In January, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston laid off 33 employees to alleviate what executives described in a staff letter as an unsustainable deficit. The Speed Art Museum in Louisville, Kentucky laid off all 9 employees of its education department in September. A reduced number of school tours resumed this year at an increased cost of $10 per student. Experts said the success of companies selling ice cream and illusions compared with traditional museums presenting paintings and sculptures should be sobering but not surprising. If you look at all the research about people's reasons for going to the museum, a top answer has long been, I want to have fun with my friends and loved ones. The ethos of the Classic Museum has not been that ethos, said Andres Zanto, an author and strategic advisor to museums, private foundations, and commercial brands. And while executives like Vora have emphasized that their companies are not in direct competition with art museums, others have tried to blur that line. It's an art museum. It's a story experience. It's a playground, said Vince Kadlubek, the chief vision officer at Meow Wolf, an immersive art company that grew out of a collective he and other artists founded in 2008. And so with that, I'd say we don't design our experiences specifically for kids. We do design experiences for the kid in all of us. Meow Wolf's 5 locations each attract hundreds of thousands of visitors annually, a spokesperson said. Adult tickets cost at least $45, but the VIP packages for the brand's Las Vegas experience, a supermarket where visitors step through a freezer into a surreal world, can run as much as $119. Like many executives, Kadlubek stressed the importance of traditional museums, but he also believes that their approach to the public is partly to blame for their challenges in audience growth. Honestly, there has been decades worth of ignoring the general population when it comes to art institutions, and that's just the truth. Kadlubek said kids have been ignored and families have been ignored, and people without the same level of education or socioeconomic privilege have been ignored in the art world generally. But traditional museums are working to woo more tourists and families. In 2023, the Metropolitan Museum of Art opened a $5 million interactive education center on the institution's ground floor, and when the Studio Museum in Harlem opened its new $300 million building uptown, it emphasized new classroom spaces for local school children to learn about art. Syra Levinson, the Deputy Director of Learning and Engagement for the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum, said the institution had deepened its efforts in engaging with children, families, and teens. She pointed to the museum's free membership program for teenagers, which has enrolled nearly 1,400 members, and she added that the museum's attendance in learning and engagement programs had increased by 16% between 2024 and 2025. The nonprofit model offers tax breaks to museums, but it also restricts their ability to fundraise. For-profit museums are unencumbered by those regulations. For example, Meow Wolf raised north of $200 million in private capital between 2016 and 2019, according to Kadlubek. While Kadlubek sees traditional museums as falling behind the times in drawing families, he is one of many executives in the for-profit field who agree that our cultural need nonprofits that work to preserve important artworks. The traditional museum space is incredibly relevant and won't ever and probably should never be fully pop cultural, he added. We need spaces and resources and support for artwork that is created for reasons other than to sell a ticket. Proponents of traditional museums like Riley of Remuseum are concerned that slow-moving bureaucracies and art institutions are not fulfilling their mission. He is thinking ahead to what happens decades from now if younger generations don't have meaningful relationships to art. If you want to think about your long-term relevance and survival, Riley said, being able to be attractive to children and parents is the way you ensure that you have visitors 10 to 40 years from now. The 10 most mind-altering theater moments of 2026 so far. Our critic chose 10 moments from the theatrical year that shifted her thinking. The theater is always surprising us. A much-revived musical can, with just one small change in interpretation, turn into an opaque mystery. Actors famous for being hilarious may reveal themselves as great tragedians. Sometimes a show can be so surprising that it reimagines what theater is for. Looking back at the first half of 2026, I see many bright and wonderful theatrical moments, many brilliant things, one might even call them. But I've been particularly preoccupied with those scenes that actually changed my thinking. Here, then, are the 10 most mind-altering moments of the 2026 theatrical year so far. Time passes for Ellen Brody. I used to believe that true horror-level suspense was impossible on stage. I had never felt in a theater that something scary was creeping up behind me, at least that is, not until I saw Time Passes for Ellen Brody at a Sunset Park warehouse space during last winter's Exponential Festival. From the start of the Goat Exchange's bizarre literary riff on Steven Spielberg's Jaws, a pile of gray fabric lay slumped in the center of the room. When the actress Chloe Claudel walked down stage, a fan began to whine, and the fabric pile very slowly inflated to a 12-foot-long dirigible shark. Over the course of what might have been 10 minutes, Claudel ignored the life-size great white as it swelled behind her. While I watched its painted mouth take shape, my heart clutched. There it is, I thought. I'm feeling dread. King Lear, my favorite Shakespeare play to read, has also been the one that disappointed me most in performance. Even after a dozen or more productions of King Lear, I felt I had never found the complete Lear that I loved on the page. Lear must be many people, a leader, a fool, a lunatic, a saint. Right at the start of Karen Coonrod's Compagnia dei Columbari production of La Mama, though, 10 actors appeared wearing paper crowns, sharing Lear's text and embodying separately all the quarreling aspects of Lear's mind. The revelation of how the show would work. A storm of words shared out among the company felt like a thunderclap at last. Someone had solved the unbearable weight of Shakespeare's most tragic character. Coonrod gave him to 10 actors to carry instead of one. What we did before our moth days. For most of Wallace Shawn's What We Did Before Our Moth Days, 4 actors sat in chairs speaking directly to the audience in long discursive monologues. The only movement that the director Andre Gregory allowed them was a little bit of business with cups of tea. Shawn's title refers obliquely to death, and several of the narrators seem to be speaking from beyond the veil, explaining themselves in the story of a painfully betrayed marriage to the living theatergoers. Toward the end of this 4-way Shaggy Dog narrative, a man played by John Early meets with his father's longtime mistress, played by Hope Davis. After hours of direct address to the audience, the 2 actors actually turn and speak to each other. The contact feels shocking. Dialogue, exchange, life. After the long twilight of the show, Shawn made conversation seem precious again. Death of a Salesman. Joe Mantello's staging of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman has been a pinnacle this year, much praised for its operatic setting and its excellent performances, from Nathan Lane's deluded Willie Loman to Laurie Metcalf's fire-breathing Linda. As I look back at it, though, I think this production's emotional key may be the moment in which Christopher Abbott's Biff breaks down and weeps in his father's lap. Abbott's portrayal is the most emotionally volatile version of the role I've ever seen. When Biff menaced his father during a fight, I finally understood why his frightened mother might want him out of the house. In Mantello's production, Biff's undisciplined aggression, such as much as Willie's mental decline, has wrecked the family's foundation, and Abbott's breakdown, beautiful though it was, seemed less like a catharsis than like a promise of worse to come. Cats, the Jellicle Ball. The Zillian Livingston and Bill Roche revival of Cats, the Jellicle Ball is probably the recent production I've seen the most times. Between its downtown run at the Perelman Performing Arts Center and its transfer to Broadway, I have skimbled more than my share of Shanks. Luckily, this gorgeous show's symbolism deepens each time you see it. For instance, in the very first moment of the night, DJ Griddlebone Ken Ard blows a glittering dust off the original cast album. His brief gesture distills the whole show to its essence. Ard was in the very first Broadway Cats cast in 1982, and his presence, if you know who he is, builds a bridge across 40 years. Right at the onset, the directors overhauling Andrew Lloyd Webber's old musical make sure they demonstrate their respect for the source. The moment makes you reconsider dust and age and even neglect, since they are all the elements that make this new Cats sparkle. Othello. Another of the finest shows in the first half of the year was Bedlam Theater's stripped-down Othello, directed by Eric Tucker, without changing costumes. 4 multitasking actors played all of the Venetians and Moors and Cypriots tangled up in the evil Iago's plot to drive his general Othello insane. Tucker's directorial inventiveness made this whole show a delight, but I was struck most by Susan Milonzi when she was playing Iago's wife, Amelia. Late in the show, as Amelia and Desdemona Suzanne Hoffman discussed their femicidal husbands, Milonzi spat out an embittered monologue about men's hatred of women. Her pitch-dark fury upended my perception of Shakespeare tragedy. Over the centuries, much time has been spent puzzling out Iago's motives, but why do we bother? Amelia is clear. In her eyes, all men are vicious. Hate Radio. In Hate Radio at St. Anne's Warehouse in Brooklyn, the Swiss director Milo Rau and his company, International Institute of Political Murder, reconstructed a hypothetical broadcast of radio television, Libre des Mille Collines, RTLM, the notorious radio station that radicalized listeners and coordinated attacks during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. The show isn't a new one. By the time Hate Radio reached Brooklyn, it had been on various tours since 2011, yet it felt brutally, cruelly fresh. At one point, after the audience had heard a litany of horrors, the RTLM DJ put on reel-to-reels, I'd Like to Move It, and the audience started to unwind in response. It came as a shock, piled on the other shocks of the night. No matter how horrible the content immediately preceding it, an up-tempo bop and apparently reset any limbic system. That song, jaunty, groovy, fun, comprised the most chilling 3 minutes of my theatrical year. Cold War Choir Practice. Real Redneck's action comedy Cold War Choir Practice, directed by Nude Adams at MCC, is the Bizarro's 80s inflected child of Jumpin' Jack Flash and Red Dawn. A plucky little girl, Alana Raquel Bowers, finds herself drawn into a Soviet conspiracy after her speak and spell starts talking in Russian. Her suspicious grandmother, Liza Mitchell, and her wacky aunt by marriage, Crystal Finn, accelerate the plot. In the show's most perfectly bonkers scene, Mitchell and Finn get tied up, still bickering as a bomb ticks down beside them. Reddick's play premiered at the Club Thumb Summer Works Festival in 2025, and I had always believed that Club Thumb Productions needed a tiny off-Broadway incubator space to work. This deliriously comic moment in Adams' Lux MCC transfer changed my mind. We should give these shows and powerhouses like Mitchell and Finn the biggest stages we've got. Joe Turner's Coming On. When Abigail C. Onwulanli first enters the stage late in the Broadway revival of August Wilson's Joe Turner's Coming On, she's a sign that the night is coming to its conclusion. Onwulanli plays Martha Pentecost, the long-lost wife of the troubled Harold Loomis, who spends much of the drama looking for her. In Wilson's text, a super-devout Martha appears so that Harold can complete his quest, since once he finds her, he'll be free to find himself. But in Debbie Allen's production, Martha eclipses the rest of the show. She could almost be starting a new play of her own. Onwulanli's Martha blazes with charisma. Her spirit burns like a tongue of fire. In Wilson's 10-play century cycle, men are usually the tragic Samsons or the far-seeing prophets. Men are the ones who challenge death or shake their fists at heaven. In this single unforgettable scene, though, that equation reverses. What if a woman were the promised one? In one penetrating shout, Onwulanli suggests an answer. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the July 1st issue of the New York Times. Your reader has been Claudia, and I thank you for listening.